Hey everyone, welcome to the first ever exciting episode of Kentik Close-Up, where we zoom in on the latest Kentik features, products, or capabilities. In each episode, our team brings you a focused interview of just one aspect of the suite of Kentik's network observability solutions. My name is Leon Adato. I'm one of the technical evangelists here at Kentik, and with me today are Greg Villan, the Senior Director of Product and Design. Welcome to the show.
Hey everyone.
And Lauren Basil, Senior Product Marketing Manager. Welcome to you as well.
Hello.
All right, so I know that we have some work to do here, but first, I just want to show up as regular human beings. So would you do me a favor and take a minute and tell everybody a little bit about, okay, fine, whatever your title is, but then what else is going on in your life? Like what's exciting or interesting or new that you'd like people to know about? Lauren, we're going to start with you.
Sure. So as Leon mentioned, my name's Lauren Basil. I'm on the product marketing team here at Kentik. Have been here for just past my 1 year. So I'm excited to share a lot of the peering work that we've worked on over the last year. But on the personal level, let's see. I'm a huge pug person. I've got 2 pugs. I am, your stereotypical pug obsessed millennial. So, come at me with, they've got their own wardrobe, they've got their sweaters, so let your imagination run wild there. And happy to be here and demo this.
Very good. I'm more of a Great Pyrenees person myself, and they do not dress up well. They already have way too much fur, so you can't really dress them up. That's amazing. Well, thank you for joining me today. Okay, Greg, a little bit about you and what you do and all that stuff.
All right. As you said, my name is Greg. I got the coolest name in the US, not so cool at home. I'm a transplant. I've been living in the US for 10 years, but prior to that, I was living in France, around Paris. I've spent half of my life building networks, and now I'm in the other half of my life where I help people build these networks based on my experience from the past. I come from France. I'm still a little bit involved with the community in France, as I'm on the board of an internet exchange, French IX, that I've helped create in around 2005 or something. Doesn't make me any younger.
You did it when you were 8, so it's fine.
a bit about myself. I wish a bit about myself. My main hobby is collecting hobbies. Whatever it is, you name it: kicks, musical instrument. Very opinionated taste in music, anything to start a conversation. I'm your man.
Got it. Yeah, I can attest to that. Also, we have at Kentik, we have a few channels about movies and music and stuff, and Greg is very present in those. So once again, I want to thank you both for helping kick off this new series. And all right, so now we have a job to do. We got to talk about something, and that something specific is PeeringDB. Now, before we dive into how Kentik is leveraging this mysterious and shy creature, do either of you or both of you want to give a quick explainer of what PeeringDB is all about?
Yeah, so I can take the first stab. As we all know, the internet is a network of networks, right? The internet is built upon all these networks interconnecting.
It's a series of tubes.
It's a series of tubes, and they're all interconnected with each other across the globe, right? Sharing traffic. And so what PeeringDB really is, it's essentially the public address book for these networks and the interconnection points that make up the internet. So it's a user-maintained database where networks can go on and basically publish their footprint, right? So there are points of presence across the globe in different regions at either internet exchange points or at interconnection facilities like data centers. And it's a place where peering managers, peering coordinators, they can see the various peering policies at different networks, the requirements that other networks may have in order to peer with them. And they have an easy way to look up who to contact at these various ASNs if they're interested in setting up a peering connection. So Greg, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add there.
Well, really, mostly what network engineers try and do based on the requirements of their network is to try and mesh themselves into the other networks, really to find shortest routes, whether that be for cost or performance. And the interconnection protocols, and there's mainly one, BGP here, doesn't contain any such information as that network that you're not yet connected to, that you're currently seeing through your transit provider, is at these locations. And so really it's a case where the community stepped up probably in the early 2000s, if I remember correctly, to create that yellow pages of, well, I'm looking to connect with that network. Where can I find them? So it's a database of footprint, whether it is facilities, they call that facilities, most people call them POPs, or internet exchanges. So an internet exchange being a big switch on which everyone connects to be able to exchange traffic directly.
Very cool. All right. So that's, for anybody who hadn't heard about that, and I'll be honest, I hadn't heard about it much before I started with Kentik. It just wasn't on my radar. That's really cool. Greg, like you said, it's the yellow pages, and oh my God, I am so very old. But I guess a more important question, or the next question, is why would it matter to IT practitioners in general? And also Kentik users in particular. Like why? Okay, great. It's good to know that there's that thing out there, just like we know that mile markers serve a purpose, or, when people do, when I find a surveying pin, usually because I trip over it when I'm walking through my backyard, like I know that they exist for a reason, but why would the regular IT person want to know about PeeringDB? What's the value that there might be for us?
Well, really one of the goals as a person who operates a network is to put users in touch with content. The rest in the middle is the internet, basically. But what you want is whoever's going to consume that service in the end to get it at a cost that's affordable and at a performance that's acceptable, really. And so in order to do that conveniently, to meet your users, or if you're a user, to meet your content, right, the other way around, is really you need to contract the internet and avoid as many apps as you can, really. And so connecting directly the users to the content is one of the everlasting goals that any person running a network with in mind accessibility or performance of access to content has, really. And so you need to at some point figure out what are your target networks, what are the bigger target networks in any locale, which you do with traffic analysis, and where can you meet them in order to increase performance or reduce cost towards or from these guys.
Perfect. Lauren, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say that, Kentik users are running and operating the world's most important networks every single day. And as Greg mentioned, the North Star that they're always moving towards is lowering cost, increasing performance, and maximizing their resiliency of their network. And peering is one of those strategies, is a critical way that they're able to do that. And so having a database that's easily accessible, that enables planners, network engineers, coordinators, and really edge optimization strategists to be able to have that footprint and see, where can we be interconnecting? How can we reduce the number of hops? How can we deliver that content to our end users with the lowest latency as possible? It's a really critical database that is relevant to a lot of Kentik users, IT practitioners in general, and which is why it was so important for Kentik to integrate said database.
And so awesome. Even further than that, if you're thinking about an ever-growing network to ever-growing set of eyeballs or content providers, really, at some point, you're going to have to decide, all right, we're opening service in France. I'm going to take an example amongst many others, unrelated to the fact that I'm French. You're going to have to decide where to go, right? And these decisions are analytical decisions. Now, the industry has so far very much relied on some amount of arcane knowledge, which is kind of like focused in the hands of a limited set of well-known industry people called peering strategists and peering managers who know all the data centers, all the internet exchanges in the world. But in the end, this is almost a programmatic decision that people can make. And so we can remove the art part of it and make it a fully science-based decision-making process.
And democratize it too, which is also very French. So, perfect. All right, I must see this. I must be able to know it. So will one of you take me through a demo?
Yeah, of course.
Fantastic. There. Okay.
So what I can do here is kind of like show you where kind of the need came from, knowing that PeeringDB existed. Because one of the things that Kentik keeps doing, and it's kind of an obsession of mine, which is there's a lot of tools and silos in running infrastructure. You get that information from here, that telemetry from here, then you go here, and in the end, inevitably what happens is that someone who's more patient than the rest of the company takes all that data, puts it in a gigantic spreadsheet, because he's the only one who knows how to do VLOOKUPs, and comes up with a plan. And I've done that most of my life. And as you probably know, network engineers are just dangerous enough as coders that they can make some serious damage without really producing something that's really maintainable outside of their own love for their own bugs and their own repository. So this is where
nobody else is ever going to use it anyway. So who cares, right?
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Less and less engineers are going to use it. Execs want to use it. You need really network observability is all about getting the answer you need without needing to be the expert, right? And so we can help with that. And so I figured I'd start showing you how would someone do it with PeeringDB, right? And so one of the things as an intensive user of PeeringDB in the past that I've noticed is that PeeringDB is great at giving you the footprint of one network. And I'll show you, I'll take a random, well, not so random network. I'll take that one. So network is identified by what we call an autonomous system that makes it uniquely identifiable. So I'm using Netflix as an example here because, well, I know this network particularly well, having worked with them in the past. And so you'll see a certain sum of information that is either available via an API, but mostly like in browse mode, right? And so you'll see things that are policy related on the left side. And again, I have to mention how much effort, community effort went into building this over time. This is like, we're looking at 20 years worth of building this. So this is a really useful and commonly accepted standard here. And so you'll see the policy related information on the left, meaning that not all networks can peer with each other, right? You can't peer with Lumen or whatever their newest name is because they're a transit provider, so they want to sell you traffic. And so that will be mentioned in their peering policy, or they'll mention that you need ratios that are 1-to-1 so that is beneficial to both parts. So the policy part, right? Can I actually peer with these guys knowing my network? The other part is what's their footprint? So their footprint is twofold. It's public internet exchanges and facilities that they're at. So you see them as these two tables on the right. But the thing that here isn't captured very efficiently, at least in my opinion as a network engineer user, is, okay, right, I am network 1, 2, 3, 4. What is my footprint compared to that one? Where can we meet? So I have to take a mental picture of this, then take a mental picture of mine, right? Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly. And that's also one of the things that us network nerds tend to do is remember AS numbers on top of their head.
That blew my mind. The first time I went to, it was Nanog, and people actually had their ASN number on their name tag. And I'm like, oh, 1763, I love you. Like, who does that?
Us, unfortunately. But it's a good point because it's really why this is arcane knowledge. Like you look at a router, you look at a routing table, and you have to know that that thing that is prefix that is causing problem to you is that ASN that you know whom it is. And so it's really arcane. And so what I was saying is that I've got my footprint, 2 internet exchanges, Ashburn and Links Nova, which is also in Ashburn. So 2 internet exchanges and 1 data center. Now I got to go back to the previous one and try and remember, right? Try and remember what is the intersection of these records, my records, and their records. It's like, it is way more difficult than it should be. And so this is where we kind of started, right?
Got
And
it.
so one of the things that our users don't know about, and I love showing that off all the time, is our search capabilities. And so we talked about an ASN previously, which was Netflix. So AS2906 here. And so I'm going to find it here. Where is it? Here. And that takes me directly to the details page for this AS network.
Mhm.
And now if you look at this tab, this nice little tab here, what we did is put in perspective my traffic data that you'll see on the left, which basically summarizes how much traffic I'm exchanging with that network that I'm looking at, in this case, Netflix, right?
Mhm.
And the footprint. And in a way that I can kind of like try and zero in on details of that. And so you'll see at the bottom the peering sites that they're on and the internet exchanges that they're on. And I'll get into the details here because there's really like some cool, useful things that like don't appear immediately. Now, what's interesting is that I can zero in on like only anything really, any kind of like name for a network or name for a data center and so on to refine my search. And like if I want to only look at the United States, let's just do that. And so I can filter this out because I want to appear in the US right now. And maybe what's really interesting is to look at stuff that we have in common, right? And so in that case, I instantly see that we're in 3 common data centers, right?
Mhm.
Now, while in Rome, I guess, I can also see, again, thanks to that PeeringDB data, that other networks are here. And so I've got a quick overview about all the networks that are here, and I can filter out anyone that has a peering policy that's not open, because my chances of getting any peering relation with them is obviously very, very slim, right?
Mhm.
And I can look at whether they're a content provider, which they would be heavy outbound, or an internet access provider, in which case they would be heavy inbound. So I can kind of like filter out on that. Now, even more interesting here, let's look at all the data, is you'll see, if I look at an internet exchange, I've got one mentioned here, and maybe I need to zoom in a little bit for you. I've got one that is Chicago IX, I think, I believe so. And you see that it's not really in common. And so what does that mean? So internet exchanges may span over multiple data centers, right? The idea is that it's just a big LAN, let's call it that, where different ASs come in and connect. And so I may be at a data center where there's an internet exchange, but I'm not at that internet exchange, in which case I'd like to know. And so I see that I'm on this facility, this site that's Equinix Chicago, that has this internet exchange called Chicago IX, meaning that quite easily, if I subscribe to a port with that internet exchange at that site that I'm already at, so all it takes is for me to draw a cable to them, right? Then I'll have access to everyone that's here, including Netflix, the one I was looking at. And again, everyone that's at this site will appear here in PeeringDB. So that's kind of like what we started with, knowing that you cannot imagine the amount of Python script that I've created over time. Every time thinking I'm going to do a better one this time and I'm going to open source it, never actually doing it because, let's be honest, I got a job.
Right.
And so this information is really hard to parse, although it's, as you can see, extremely programmatic. So that's really what we wanted to remove the drudgery, really,
Mhm.
of looking up such data and make the answers available really like instantly. Because people shouldn't spend 2 hours trying to figure out what their common footprint is with an ASN.
Right.
Yeah, and one thing to add on here is how huge having the traffic component, the traffic profile in there is. That's a huge portion where like the peering teams would have to sit down with engineering to get reports pulled from either their NetFlow tooling or traffic data to support if they have the inbound or outbound ratios required for different policies, right? So we've integrated that component in a very simplistic way on this page, but we take it to the next level, of course, in other areas of the platform. But it's really that marrying, it's the combination of the PeeringDB plus your network's actual real life dynamic traffic data that is instant. You can pull anytime, and these teams don't have to rely on poking engineering all the time or using engineering cycles or resources just to pull traffic instances.
Amazing. All right. Anything else, or is that really the whole PeeringDB story?
Oh no, there's a lot. So we started quote unquote simple, but the beauty of it is that there was an actual void that like people felt the same way we did. And so this is calling for numerous feature requests as follow-ups, right? And so the more it goes, the more we're integrating closely with that database of PeeringDB throughout the product, really. And so if I may show you, one of the things Kentik does is that we enrich your traffic data with additional attributes that are useful. And so in order to do so, you export traffic from devices and to geolocate them and to add the notion of geolocation into your flows, you locate your routers in what we call sites in the product. And so the next thing we did was like, well, you know what? I'm going to link a site to a PeeringDB facility, because chances are at this point in PeeringDB's life, they pretty much have every single data center in the world in their yellow pages. And so instead of you having to tediously enter the address and everything with the risk of geocoding not working well at this point, when you create a site, you'll directly find an existing PeeringDB record for it, which will do everything automatically for it. And on top of that, we'll associate it with that site in your data, which means that now all traffic is identified as traffic that could potentially go to that PeeringDB site. And so think of it as if some networks haven't created a PeeringDB record. And it happens quite a bit. The enterprise side of the house isn't well-versed in the peering ecosystem most of the time. And so they won't have a PeeringDB record. That doesn't mean this information of finding what their common footprint with other networks isn't useful. They would definitely benefit from it. So it gives, on top of that, it gives access to that footprint overlap data without them needing a PeeringDB record, right? And so that's kind of the next thing that we did. Now, again, within the product, or specialty is enriching your traffic data with metadata that's very useful. And so one other thing we did, which is a large part of the product, we call interface classification. And interface classification basically takes your SNMP data through a rules engine and associates attributes to every interface in your network and enriches that traffic data with it. And so you'll see that, for instance, we have like 3 dimensions that we bolt programmatically based on rules that you configure onto your traffic. What connectivity type that is, meaning is it transit, is it peering, is it an aggregate between switches, is it a data center to data centers link? So we do that programmatically. Basically, it inspects your interface MIB values such as description, such as IP addresses on the interface, name of the interface, and such. And based on rules, assigns connectivity type, but also whether the interface faces the inside of your network or the outside of your network, which is incredibly useful for filtering traffic if you're doing queries, but also what provider is behind it. And so we had all that programmatic awesomeness in the product initially, but we thought, you know what? PeeringDB has, for each internet exchange, the IP ranges that it operates on. And so if we look at all the interfaces, the SNMP data, we have the IP address of each one of them. And so for each one address that we detect, the IP address is the one of an IP range that's assigned uniquely to an internet exchange, we can say that that interface is an external one. It's connected to an internet exchange, which is that internet exchange. So we made this out of magic, basically.
Right. Unicorn spit and angel farts or
That's
whatever.
what we're in the business of.
Right. Exactly. No, I mean, it was, a lot of dedicated coding and a lot of knowing where to look for the information more than that.
Correct.
This is amazing, not only because it's a fairly impressive feat of engineering just to, again, pull it all in, but also how useful it is, and also the community aspect of it. The fact that this was open sourced information that everybody has been maintaining since, like you said, the early 2000s, and the sheer value of it, and also the fact that most everybody didn't know it was there until they knew. And so now it's just right there in the tool. It's really incredible to see. Okay, that's amazing. And that's probably all we have, right? There's nothing else that we need to show.
Well, that's where it gets better. So we kind of had a whole like kind of long-term slate in our mind, leading to what I'm going to show you right now is. So here's the thing. I mentioned early on, one of the key tasks that peering strategists usually have to do is even more tedious than all I mentioned before. Let's say we're trying to choose which internet exchange we want to go to.
Okay.
And so that means evaluating prospective traffic that we could exchange by peering with the members of this internet exchange, right?
Okay.
And so how do you do that without Kentik, right? So you take the list of the ASNs that are on this internet exchange, okay? You take your entire dump of traffic of anything that comes out of your network and comes into your network with the source or destination ASNs, the ranked top N ASNs to or from your network. And eventually, you have to massage this quite heavily into some form of spreadsheet, Python code, you name it, bits and pieces, probably not maintained by a software engineer, and with all the flip sides that it has and comes with. And then eventually you make a determination of, you also have to factor in whether these networks are willing to peer with you or not, which is, again, a PeeringDB attribute for each ASN. And kind of like come up with an estimate of, I can get that amount of traffic in and that amount of traffic out. That set of tasks usually takes about a week because, I mean, we all got jobs, and spreadsheeting is not our main job. And so this is tedious, and it really doesn't need to be. So we've included it in Data Explorer. And so as flows get ingested into a platform, they have, as part of the natural NetFlow attributes, they have a source IP and a destination IP. These we reverse to source ASN or destination ASN because there's a one-to-one relation, right? Mm-hmm. So your flow records come in with source ASN or destination ASN quite easily. This is how you build your top N ASN lists of traffic. Mm-hmm. For each ASN, you know from PeeringDB where they are available at, internet exchange-wise or facility-wise. And so let's get into Data Explorer and look at this new set of filters that we've added to Data Explorer that makes this a breeze. So I'm going to look at traffic that's coming into my network. So I'm going to choose a network boundary, source network boundary that's external. So that's just filtering for traffic that exclusively comes into my network, right? And I'm going to look at traffic that would come from an ASN that is member of a certain IX, let's say I'll put it France IX Paris. And so what it's going to do is evaluate for me the amount of traffic that I could potentially exchange with ASNs that are in Paris. And I'll show you that in addition to that, I want to add another limitation. I'm going to look at traffic that comes into my network via transit, right? So that traffic uses my transit provider to get into my network. And I want to shift as much as possible from these top ISNs on Paris, on France IX. I want to shift it as I get my France IX connection going, right? And so I'm going to get that. And then I'm going to look at the dimensions, source ASN. And so here I will see, and I'll get to an even better view then, that all of these guys I could potentially peer with. Now, I'm going to restrict that to those that have a peering policy that will let me do that, right?
Uh-huh.
So let's say it's open. Now, I have certainty that the traffic that I'm looking at currently goes into my network using transit, right? But they're willing to peer. I know that beforehand. So my estimates are somewhat precise when it comes to that. And that didn't take me a week to generate, right?
Right. And I think more to the point is that once this is written, this graph can be turned into a report or whatever and run ad hoc. Like the work you just did to find the qualities that you were looking for, that was the work of the work, but once you have it, it's saved and it's available, and anybody can go look at that at any time. And you could have a daily review of this PeeringDB information and say, well, it looks like our routes are degrading enough that it's time to shift over to this one, or what have you, or look at the boost we can get, or oh, it's Super Bowl Sunday, we definitely want to route our traffic around there, or Black Friday, or whatever it is. You can make decisions almost in real time about how you want your traffic to move through those, as I said before, those interconnected tubes of the internet.
And like, as you're looking at it here, like there's like around 25 gigs of traffic that's costing me transit money,
mm-hmm.
which would definitely be optimized cost-wise if I only use transit as a backup and used the internet exchange as the primary one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in that case, I'm specifically looking at stuff that I could financially optimize. And the ease of being able to detect these cases is a weapon of choice in a business of service providers where margins are all that counts, really.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I hate to use the word like game changer as such a overused marketing term, but really, like, this is a game changer for the peering community. We've reduced weeks, hours of work to generate this data in seconds because of the integration between the traffic, the way Kentik ingests and contextualizes the data for the peering community. So I just wanted to point out that, like, this feature, although it's a little bit hidden into the platform and it doesn't, it's not, you kind of have to know where to look. Like, the power of it is so immense. Optimizing existing ports and comparing, potential peerable traffic with a series of multiple IXs that you might be evaluating. I mean, it's new territory, quite frankly.
And the next step you can already, and every time we've demoed that feature to a customer or prospect that is heavy in the peering business, was, wait a minute, does that mean that now you could every night run a job that figures what my top ASNs are, runs a scenario on every IX, and tells me where I need to be? And this is we see it as the kind of like at the light at the end of the tunnel. This is where we're headed, really. with machine learning becoming like really trustworthy when it comes to the specific telemetry data and learning its patterns, this is where we see this coming.
Right. And this is where I want to emphasize that the Kentik platform has a full bidirectional API. So when we talk about programmatic decision making, it's not just like we at Kentik can make this do magical things. It's that anybody who has the platform, yes, you can click to your heart's content. You can deal with the interface and it is delightful and lovely and all of those things. And yet we are not all interface jockeys. Like that's not our job, but you can write programmatic things that will automatically do these interactions.
Correct.
And just spit out answers for you into whatever you're using to do configuration or whatever. I need to emphasize that.
Yeah, definitely.
And the other piece, because I know you both work a lot on the service provider side of the Kentik house, that's one of our personalities that we have. But the other personality is the regular enterprise person, where I have been working for over 35 years. And this is a set of capabilities that, as an enterprise network engineer, we knew the service providers cared about this, but it was so far beyond our ability to deal with that it just wasn't, right? But now, even if you're an enterprise person, whether it's a small, medium, or large enterprise, you now can have those same kinds of understandings and insights without having to dedicate a team of people to constantly be pulling the data that we've been, the tedious thing that we've all been talking about. This puts it in the hands, I said democratizing and I was being a little silly, but I really mean it. This is putting a lot of really key information into the hands of anybody without requiring, a lot of effort or a lot of specialized knowledge.
Well, and think about it, the enterprise networks, especially following on to the pandemic, the office is home, right?
Right.
And so our tools are now mostly SaaS tools, and managing access to these SaaS tools from a variety of internet service provider, because not all the employees in a company are using the same provider, is really challenging. And it requires knowledge that the enterprise initially didn't have much of because of its arcane nature. And so by removing the art part, the science stays, and that one lowers the bar to entry for anyone in the enterprise trying to optimize the way their staff accesses any SaaS products that they use on a daily basis.
Amazing. All right. Any other surprises, or is that enough for one day?
I think we're good.
What
do you think, Lauren?
I think we nailed it.
Okay. All right. So this actually takes me to the last part of Kentik Close-Up, which I call the Kentik Close-Up lightning round. What do you think is the most important thing that people watching this video before they hit stop, like, what do you want them to know? And I'm going to start it off. I want everyone to remember that no matter how odd you may think you are, there is a group of people who know themselves and know each other by their ASN number. So just take comfort in the fact that you're probably not the high watermark for weird, and that there's universes of weird out there that you are now a part of. That may not be the most business-oriented understanding, but I take my learnings where I can get them. Lauren, do you want, any final thoughts that may be a little more relevant to the Kentik story?
Sure. So I think that, one of the overall sort of ethos of Kentik is we want to enable network engineers or anyone who's operating and running networks to be able to ask any question about their network and quickly get the answers that matter to them. And for too long, that's been so hard for peering, interconnection, edge strategy and optimization experts who really need access to this data and have been craving access to be able to layer on all of the most important components, including the outside source of PeeringDB layered on with their traffic. And then we didn't even get to some of the other components in the Kentik platform, like our connectivity costs, that is super relevant for this community as well. And I just want to, it's incredible that we're able to get to a point where we can say that we're moving towards, we are almost there to be able to answer any question that the peering community needs from not only from their network, but how it interconnects with other networks.
Fantastic. All right, Greg, bring it home.
So I'll kind of like get almost somewhat metaphysical on how we build products over at Kentik, because like none of these products just come out of nowhere, right? These are the fruits of like unbelievable, amazing discovery. You mentioned Nano, like every single one of these features has started by us drinking a beer with someone at Nano, or a non-alcoholic beverage. Doesn't have to be a beer, but
Some
really,
people think this is tea.
nah, you didn't get me fooled. And so, like, it all starts with how much of our time we love to spend building the product with customers. Like, I mean, Lauren's an expert in that field. I'm an expert in that field. I've built networks of various shapes and sizes. But in the end, whatever our prospects and customer tell us is the way we move the product forward. And all of these ideas, like, I think we're just responsible for execution on these, but really we source them, and we heavily rely as a product team on input from customers, and we've been blessed with the customer base we've had to be able to build that easily, because that information is just so valuable.
Wonderful. All right. Well, again, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come show this stuff off and teach me about it, and also the rest of the Kentik Close-Up, and be part of this first episode. Very exciting. Thank you both so much.
Pleasure for me.
Thank you. And I also want to thank everyone watching this episode. It is no exaggeration to say that there is an overwhelming amount of bingeable content options, including the Netflix that we were looking at and stuff like that. And we here at Kentik appreciate the time you've taken to carve out a little bit of watching time for us. If you'd like to get notified when new episodes drop, remember to use the subscribe button below. For Kentik Close-Up, I'm Leon Adato.